Hey, Long in the Boot listeners, do you have tree debris? Do you still have things down from the hurricane? Do you need help cleaning up? Do you need stuff generally removed, be it limbs, trees, you name it, all kinds of brush hogging, lawn care, pressure washing? Well, you need to get on your phone right now and call Mr. Fontenot, R. Jared Fontenot, at Direct Service and Maintenance, LLC. How was that?
That was great. He cleaned up for us. We had tree debris.
We had tree debris, and he did a great job. And we promised him we'd say something on the podcast. And then we went and recorded the podcast and completely forgot.
Because we're stupid.
Because we're dumb. And you know whose fault it is?
Putin.
Vladimir Putin. That's right.
Yep.
All right, folks. There you go. And seriously, call Direct Service and Maintenance, 337-794-9019.
Excellent work.
Thank you very much.
Reasonable price.
Now, listen to the show and have fun. Yeah, but how is putting on headphones different?
It is. It just makes things different.
It makes it feel like more like you're on a podcast?
I guess so. It shifts my attention in a way. It becomes more detail. You live life a little more in detail.
So you're saying that it actually affects your senses?
Yes, it does.
It makes you feel more professional?
More professional.
Well, that's all we can ask.
Mo better.
All right. Well, I guess we should hit the button.
Do it.
Listeners, this is the Long in the Boot podcast, the podcast coming to you from the heel of the boot of Southwest Louisiana. I am your host, G. Long. Sitting across the way from me is my lovely bride,
Aww.
Deb.
Hello, all.
Yes, it's March 13th is the day we're recording this. You'll, of course, get it a couple days from now, barring any technical issues. But today, March 13th, is our 35th wedding anniversary.
Yes.
And 35 years.
Yes, on a Friday the 13th.
Of wedded bliss.
We made that split decision not to have a big giant wedding and stop the dress getting made. And
just quit all that.
No invitations.
Let's go to Beaumont, get a judge, then go have some barbecue. That's what
right.
I say.
Yeah, I miss Luther's.
I do too.
Yeah,
man, that place was great. It was the best.
It wasn't exactly the wedding planned meal, but it did us good.
Well, it's been an exciting couple of weeks.
It has. Forget the last 35 years. Well, actually, since March 11th, 2020, it's pretty much gone from one moment of unbelievable shit to another.
Yeah, well, when we were young, we had, of course, nuclear annihilation hanging over our heads.
We did. We were children of that
age. And then
it
kind of went away. I mean, it was still always there in the background.
We saw the videos at school.
Right.
And it was talked about, and I knew in the backdrop of my life there was the Cold War. I knew about the Vietnam War because I saw that on TV every day.
And in history class, we learned about all the
my daddy went
atomic tests and all that good stuff.
But it wasn't prescient in my life.
It had not moved back to the forefront in quite some time.
Maybe that's because we didn't have the same kind of media coverage we have today.
Well, I think what really put a kibosh on the whole idea of survivability in a full-on nuclear exchange is that a couple of those movies. One was called The Day After.
Yeah, that kind of scared people.
And there was another one. It was a British version of the same kind of idea, it was way more bleak. And
the British, they had a longer history. With
they weren't. They knew. Yeah, and you got to see what the effects of nuclear winter and all of those fun things would be, which is basically that we'd all die together. But I suppose if we all die together, then we all die together. And hey, there's some kind of comfort in that, I guess.
Yeah, and I would say we had 35 good years.
Sure.
Well, actually 39.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Your older people screwed it up.
All right.
So enough of that. that.
Move from there. Well, actually, we can't really move from there.
No, there's a couple things we have to mock.
Was there anything local? Did you want to do like phone number, any of that kind of?
Oh yeah, always
the housekeeping stuff, Mr. Long.
Yeah, I got
just like
sidetracked.
in your
Well,
classroom,
it was the wedding anniversary. I was just so giddy with excitement.
Oh, you were looking me in the eye and thinking how she looks so different now.
Yeah, like I don't.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm wider. You would be able to see more of the wall when we got.
I told my students that the other day. I said, look at your relatives and the men. You're going to get wide.
Everybody gets wider. My head got bigger.
Yeah.
My hat size changed. I mean, it's really weird. But anyway, so if you'd like to call
it's all that damn knowledge.
If you'd like to call the Long in the Boot podcast and wish us a happy anniversary, hey, feel free.
No.
It's 337-502-9011. And the email is longintheboot@gmail.com. And the website, which I haven't touched in a week at least. I'll take care of it tomorrow when I'm not doing anything at school. And because it's a special day. No kids.
I have a Zoom.
And I'm sorry. Meetings.
3 hours long.
There's no one of us as dumb as all of
Gilligan
us.
at least got a 3-hour tour. I'm going to get a 3-hour Zoom.
And that website is longintheboot.com. That's pretty much it. There might be 3 W's in front of it. Who knows? Trip dub.
There is, of course.
Well, I don't know that you have to do that anymore. I'm not sure.
I think it just does it.
There's some websites where if I put that in, it won't go.
No, because that's an HH.
I don't. Who knows?
..
It's all smoke and mirrors and alchemy to me.
And none of it will matter.
And none of it matters, especially if Putin pushes the button.
Okay, so how are you? Because we can't not. I don't like to go negative, but
we got to go a little negative.
Flipping reality.
God, it's so negative right now.
What are you going to say? What are you going to do? There are analysts out there that are saying everything, and if anybody's reading about it, it's making your head hurt.
Well, first let's talk about the White House.
And your heart.
Well, let's talk about the White House and Kamala Harris, and also a couple of other minor things.
Oh, why?
Well, gosh darn it, we have to.
It's our leadership. We got to mention it.
I made the Kamala buttons pink so I could, code pink. But anyway,
is that sexist? I don't even know what to think.
First of all,
that.
She was on a podcast not too long ago. I don't know
because who isn't?
Who isn't? Look, hey, good on the guy that has the podcast. But
he got Kamala Harris.
He should get a better. He should get a better class of guest because he was asking her about the Ukraine, and I want you to listen to this nuanced and incredibly professional manner in which she explains the entire Ukraine problem
situation.
Oh, it's amazing. She does it so very well.
Clarifies it for us.
Oh.
If you're watching any level of news, even social media, you're seeing everything that's going on right now in the Ukraine. Break it down in layman's terms for people who don't understand what's going on and how can this directly affect the people of the United States.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And it goes against everything that we stand for.
Okay, so let's address her incredible performance there. Everything she said was factually correct.
It absolutely was true.
Especially the part about where big countries shouldn't invade small countries. And I would like to point out that if we as a nation look in the mirror, we can't really throw that stone very far.
And yet,
there we go. Look,
she loved that one.
I don't know how far back you want to go. You could theoretically say that every Native American tribe was a nation. They were called the 500 Nations. Mm-hmm. So we invaded lots of little tiny countries then.
Yeah, took them.
Mm-hmm. And then fast forward, we invaded, Cuba when it was owned by Spain. Naughty. And you're saying, well, that was a long time ago. Well, you're right. Okay.
Well, yeah, stick to the current situation.
Okay, Vietnam. Is Vietnam okay, or is that still far enough back we can all pretend like it was not?
It was a conflict. It wasn't.
No, we're not allowed to do that. We've already gotten on Putin's case about not calling this an invasion.
No, he uses the language.
He uses the language we used.
Manner.
Remember, it was a police action.
Yes.
Well, that's what Putin said about what he's doing now.
Yes,
it's just a police action.
A military operation is what he said.
Yeah, it was same difference.
Special military
operation. Okay, so Vietnam. No, Panama. We did invade Panama. We did.
I don't
You
know.
remember?
That was Van Halen, wasn't it?
No. We had to get rid of Manuel Noriega because he was selling all the drugs that we gave him when the CIA was running Panama.
His wife and I wore the same size shoe.
Oh.
And that lady had some shoes.
No, you're thinking of Imelda Marcos.
Oh, I'm sorry. I sure am.
She was the wife of the dictator we supported in the Philippines.
Me. Yeah. I get our stuff confused.
Which, by the way, we invaded as well. And let's see. Okay, well, Grenada.
I can't keep the invasion straight. Oh, that was a picnic.
Hey, man, that's a teeny tiny country.
That was
we invaded that one too. And then we can fast forward up to, Iraq won. I'm going to say I'm giving myself a pass on that one because, gosh darn it, Iraq invaded Kuwait. So, again, big country, little country.
So we had to step in.
We defended little country.
So we weren't the bullies in that case.
That's right. And I should point out at that time, we were protecting brown people.
Oh, is there a difference?
I'm sure the oil that they were sitting on had nothing to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
Just in case people were like...
Because we're not usually one to go.
Well, there's going to be a point coming up later where you might say racism might be involved, but I just want to point out that in this particular instance, we were defending brownish people.
So you're saying that we have that if we're keeping a scorecard,
right,
we just got a point.
And they're mostly brownish because they're exposed to lots and lots of sunlight too.
Well, skin color is a factor.
Okay, religion. We were defending Muslims. We were defending Muslims.
Okay.
We're good. We sent military troops into Bosnia during the Bosnia-Herzegovina-Serbia nonsense. Let's see. We invaded Iraq a second time. Why? To get rid of the weapons of mass destruction that they didn't have.
That weren't there.
Yes. And we all know how that went. Especially bad for Saddam Hussein. Hang him. We're going to hang him.
They pulled his statue down.
Yay.
So tearing down statues is a very effective.
And lots of their cities were destroyed and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So moving on. We have Afghanistan, of course, again, a smaller country than the United States. So I just wanted to point out that
in the grand
that thing that Kamala said about it goes against what we stand for. Apparently, we stand for invading countries that aren't doing what we want, but we are just adamantly opposed to big countries invading little countries that we like.
That are not.
You see the difference? Yeah. Okay. By the way, just to throw this out there in case you go, he's just carrying water for Vladimir Putin. Putin's a dick. Again.
You felt you had to say that.
Putin's a dick.
That you weren't defending Russia with all of your accusations towards America.
Do you hear a rocket?
Yeah, they're coming after you. They got the drone in place.
They know that my tens of listeners.
Yes, and you're affecting somebody's attitude.
Incredible reach. Now we're going to give Kamala the benefit of the doubt here,
because she was told to do it in layman's terms.
Well, maybe
she was talking to influencers.
Exactly. But wait, she went to Poland.
She did. She went to several countries.
She went to Poland, and this time I think you'll see that she nails each and every point of the United States argument about what's going on in Europe. And I think she nails it.
So she's expanding on her.
Oh, it's flawless.
I am here, standing here on the northern flank, on the eastern flank, talking about what we have in terms of the eastern flank and our NATO allies, and what is at stake at this very moment. What is at stake this very moment are some of the guiding principles around the NATO alliance.
So the guiding principles are at stake.
I'm standing here. I'm here, standing here.
She was a prosecutor.
On our northern flank, eastern flank.
Yeah, her rhetoric skills are very poor.
Wow.
And it's almost as if she doesn't really understand the situation.
Well, I don't think she has any background.
Or maybe she didn't. If she was not involved in writing the speeches, then perhaps she didn't practice.
What I would say is she doesn't have a
grasp,
a round knowledge of the situation because she's never had to pay attention to that part of the world.
Yeah, but don't you think that crash courses would be?
As we know, pointing out and talking about the history of Europe, especially Western Europe, is racist. We can't do that anymore. We can't point out those things in the past that affect the now because that's racist.
Yeah, we've talked
Nobody
about this
studies.
before.
I know. Nobody studies it anymore. We don't have any Russian experts anymore. Kissinger pointed that out. Yeah. I should have got his quote from the other day. It was phenomenal.
When we saw him on that show.
Well, because he said
actually, wasn't it Barr? Wasn't it?
It may have been.
I think it was Barr.
He said it in 2010, and everything he says has come to fruition.
Yeah, well, he was a good analyst. He
knew that part of the world because we had
understood
dealt
the
with him for so long.
Yeah.
Apparently, we've got Chinese experts out the wazoo.
We know we should.
But I don't know about the word expert anymore. There's lots of experts.
Well, and that's kind of our point, I think. Let's try to bring it in because we could talk about it all hour, but I don't think we should.
No.
We've got other shit to talk about.
Well, we do have this other lady's viewpoint.
But yeah, I was going to say, so really kind of because we're not experts and we would just be like you saying the same kinds of stuff, speculating, trying to understand and make sense of it.
Europe, the EU, the parliament in the EU, had a plenary, and that's just a meeting of all the members. That's what it's plenary.
There have been a lot of meetings taken.
Yes. But what's interesting here is I find the EU now suddenly very much looking or acting like the United States has acted over these situations for a long time. Again, not saying that what's happening isn't the worst possible thing imaginable.
Oh, yes.
There's no question.
And it could get
But there
worse.
have been the exact same things happening in places around the world for years that nobody cared about, and many people didn't even really know about because they didn't take the time to know it.
And the press didn't push it, and you have to read multiple sources.
Right. And since we are coming up on St. Patrick's Day,
we are.
There is a lady, and I know if there's any hardcore right Republicans out there and they know who this woman is, they're going to be mad because she's considered a leftist by the right in the United States.
Yeah, but when you have a good, solid argument,
Exactly.
I don't care what side you're on.
So I'm going to play her
I like your opinion.
I'm going to play her short, calm version first.
Yeah, she is very
and then I want to, because she does know the history.
And she believes what
she's brilliant. And notice I have green buttons for her because St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, I thought.
Thanks very much, President. I wholeheartedly welcome the EU's unprecedented provision of immediate protection for Ukrainian refugees fleeing this devastating war. This rightfully respects our mandate to protect fundamental rights of those entering our territories. And it's heartening to see the outpouring of support and solidarity for every point of the EU. But how do we explain that solidarity with, for example, in Poland less than 3 months ago, the fact that 19 people perished from cold on our borders, met with barbed wire and water cannon? How do we explain that solidarity with the fact that there are Afghan refugees in Greek jails charged with people smuggling? Or there are people beaten back from the borders of Croatia in appalling circumstances, sodomised and robbed. How can this be the same European Union? It's because our society, our media and our politicians portray some refugees as more human than others based on their origin and their race. We have to ensure a consistent, non-discriminatory application of international asylum law. Everybody has the right to the highest international standards. I hope this is a turning point.
Awesome.
Preach it, sister.
Yeah. And when they voted later on a thing that she had tried to get past that said we would start treating all refugees equally. No.
I'm surprised we have to say it. They didn't do it.
No. The European Union vehemently opposes letting people who they don't like into Europe as refugees. You say
it's in the title, European Union.
But Ukrainians.
Well, what are their core principles? Maybe they need to rework those so that they're very clear about which groups they will help and see as equal.
Because the refugee crisis you're seeing right now is really no different than when the Russians were destroying Syria and all those Syrians were trying to flee. Mm-hmm. But we have this rather built-in animosity.
Well, as soon as
been developed over many years.
As soon as they turn the cameras off and the stories stop, then everybody's mind just shifts and we go to the next issue.
Right. Well, Miss Claire Daly.
Claire.
Just a great name. She did not take kindly to how they were acting. You might notice a little bit more, what's the word? Anger in this one. But I'm playing it because, well, gosh darn it, when you're right, you're right.
No doubt about it, we're living in times of catastrophic crisis where the lives of innocent civilians are sacrificed in the wars of their masters. Yes, in Ukraine, but not only. Since the last plenary, tens of thousands of Afghani citizens have been forced to flee in search of food and safety. 5 million children face famine, an agonising and painful death, a 500% increase in child marriages and children being sold just so they can survive, and not a mention of it. Not here, not anywhere. No wall-to-wall TV coverage, no emergency humanitarian response, no special plenaries, not even a mention in this plenary, no Afghani delegations and no statements. My God, they must be wondering, what makes their humanitarian crisis so unimportant? Is it the colour of their skin? Is it that they're not white? They're not European? That their problems come from a US gun or a US invasion? Is it that the decision to rob their country's wealth was taken by a despotic US president rather than a Russian one? Because, my God, all wars are evil and all victims deserve support. And until we get on that page, we have no credibility whatsoever.
Well,
I know that made me emotional.
It does.
She's so powerful in her, and she's so right.
Yes.
Are we civilized human beings or not?
Right, exactly. And you know, I understand that politics occasionally leads to this. It's another arm of politics, is another arm of warfare.
But these are supposed to be our most intelligent people who can sit down and should be able to communicate with each other and use logic and reason,
right,
instead of old hatreds and hand-me-down racism.
It's hand-me-down racism. The Cold War all over again. And we got these people in government, and some of them are my age or younger, which means that they just simply copied their parents with the Cold War attitude.
Why are you still behaving like that?
And yes, we get it. Putin is crazy, but we deal with crazies all over the world normally. But for some reason, as long as he was,
for many, many reasons,
as long as he was behaving economically,
yes,
we were willing to look the other way, and his own people were willing to look. This didn't have to happen.
And this didn't happen overnight.
No, but when people look at the news and wonder why their army suffered so badly at the beginning, it's because of corruption, pure corruption. When you have a single leader who picks and chooses the people that he surrounds himself with, when he authorizes, $100 billion for a weapons system or for upgrades in the army, that $100 billion doesn't filter down to equipment.
To just the equipment. And
no, those oligarchs got their yachts somehow. You remember in America when we were going, well, you don't think that hammer actually costs $700, do you?
Yeah.
That's $50 for the hammer and $650 that'll go wherever. Come on. Yeah.
Yes, it's very frustrating. I'm not going to let you talk about it the whole time, though.
I could.
I know, I could too.
Can I talk about one last thing to lighten the mood completely?
Yeah, because it's really about maintenance, right?
Sure. We don't have to worry because the future looks bright thanks to the White House's outreach.
Oh, yes. Thank God you got this.
Okay, so the White House on Thursday, they're trying everything they can. They already run the media pretty much in the United States, but they just hadn't really cracked all the media. So they did what any president would do at any time. They called 30 of the top TikTok stars to come together on a Zoom call to receive key information about the war unfolding in the Ukraine.
So they could report to their
Yes.
followers. National
Security Council staffers and Jen Psaki, White House press secretary and Peppermint Patty lookalike. No, I borrowed that from another podcast, but I looked and it's true. She briefed the influencers about the United States' strategic goals in the region and answered questions on distributing aid to the Ukrainians, working with NATO, and how the United States would react to a Russian use of nuclear weapons. Wow. By the way, it says, and I'm reading this from the Washington Post.
Not from the SNL sketch.
As the crisis in Ukraine has escalated, millions have turned to TikTok for information on what's happening there in real time. TikTok videos offered some of the first glimpses of the Russian invasion, and since then, the platform has been a primary outlet for spreading news to the masses. Ukrainian citizens hiding in bomb shelters or fleeing their homes have shared their stories to the platform, while dangerous misinformation and Russian propaganda have also spread. The White House has been closely watching TikTok's rise as a dominant news source.
News source.
News source. I'm going to say that one more time. News
A dominant
source.
news source.
Leading to its decision to approach a select group of the platform's most influential
Influencers.
influencers. Yeah. All right. Hang on. I got to go with it. This week, the administration began working with Gen Z for Change, a nonprofit advocacy group, to help identify top content creators on the platform to orchestrate a briefing aimed at answering questions. Victoria Hammett, Deputy Executive Director for Gen Z for Change, contacted dozens with invitations via email, and then they gathered potential questions. All right, so they created the questions that these people are going to ask. They got together with them. They all talked it over.
And said, what do you need to know the most? Or what do you need to share with your
right.
viewers?
And I'm going to go with they've got a couple of them here, the influencers. And apparently this guy.
Our listeners have probably listened to
maybe
this.
so. Well, then you TikTok listeners, you'll know of Khalil Green, age 21, a creator with more than 534,000 followers.
Wow, she's
said he wasn't surprised when an invitation arrived in his email box from the White House.
He wasn't surprised by it because he recognizes his power.
People in my generation get all our information from TikTok, he said. I'm assuming he said it like that.
My 11th graders saw it all unfold on TikTok.
Yes, but they get, again, quote, people in my generation get all our information from TikTok.
Then TikTok has to pick up the
all
talk and get busy with it. Now they need to start a channel on their TikTok that does nothing but news.
It's the first place we look when trying to learn about things. Things.
Yeah. Stuff.
So he figured, well, it just made sense that the Biden administration would engage people like him.
So that they can feed them their narrative and you can feed it out to the youth and they will be aptly persuaded.
Yes. Jules Turpak, a Gen Z content creator who makes TikTok essays about digital creation.
Why are you doing that? Stop it.
I can't help it. Said the White House's decision to engage creators such as she was essential in helping to stop the spread of misinformation. Quote, those who have an audience can ideally set the tone for how others decide to assess and amplify what they see.
So we can all think like the White House wants us to think.
What? Okay, wait.
She understood what she said.
That's good. That's one.
Did. And her audience probably does too.
Okay, hang on.
Stop laughing at your own story.
I'm sorry. Aaron Parnas has recently emerged as a powerful TikTok influencer by providing nonstop news updates about Ukraine. On the night of Russia's invasion, he hosted TikTok live streams discussing the events to over 800,000 viewers. Since then, each day he's posted videos breaking down the news about the war every 45 minutes.
Oh.
Parnas said that his news was not partisan and he was getting his information directly from reputable sources in the country, such as his family members there. Local Ukrainian journalists and Ukrainian television. I love my father, but I am not my father. His father's one of those oligarchs.
He's a rich. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But he's Ukrainian or Russian?
Yes, he's Ukrainian.
Okay.
And there's another one here.
Well,
a Ukrainian-born journalist.
At least I'll give him that. If he's Ukrainian, okay.
Now, another Ukrainian-born journalist, an actual journalist, works for newspapers and such, Jules Suzdaltsev, who operates a popular TikTok news channel called, I love this, Good Morning, Bad News.
Good morning, bad news.
It's a great
You just
great
pick
title.
you pick the tone of your day by which one you're going to listen to.
He said that the briefing was too soft and that officials dodged every hard question. The energy of the call felt like a press briefing for kindergartners. Oh, was Kamala there?
Yeah, she was practicing. I told you.
So anyway, and I'll just leave it with this last line from Ellie Zeeler, an 18-year-old TikTok star with more than 10.5 million followers. She hopes to remain in communication with the White House and continue to press officials there about key issues. She sees herself as a voice for young people and the growing contingent of news consumers getting information primarily through a social media platform. Quote, I'm here to relay the information in a more digestible manner to my followers. I would consider myself a White House correspondent for Gen Z.
Oh, okay. Well, with that many followers, she's influential for sure.
The key there is information in a more digestible manner.
Well, exactly. It's going to be
dumbed down.
Yes, and
Yes.
it's going to be the
Yes.
narrative of the White House or whoever it is she's getting her
And
information
that's
from.
actually my issue more
Do
than
they
anything
not
else.
realize they're being manipulated as well?
No,
I mean, that's
No, they
the whole
don't.
point.
because they don't know anything about history.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are TikTok people who know history, but I bet they don't have the followers that people who do makeup tips have.
So we have the Biden youth. There's an oxymoron for you.
They shuffle their feet and whisper a lot.
But don't you see? He's got a direct line to the young people.
Well, his brain is becoming smooth while theirs is becoming unsmooth.
Oh,
Right? Like babies are born totally smooth, and old people tend to be really
all
smooth.
right. Maybe we should get to the actual topic du jour.
Yeah, we got about 30 minutes.
Okay, you got about 15, and I got 15, and then we'll flush it away.
Did I have any more? No, I guess I didn't.
What, you wanted another clip?
Well, yeah.
No, you know what? The Irish lady Claire, she did enough.
Well, I did have one more clip, but it went kind of along with the wedding. I mean, the anniversary thing. It was a little clip.
We'll save it for the end. Maybe we can go out on love.
I really want to play it now.
Why?
Because,
Baby.
come on.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna...
Fished in.
Damn you. Damn it. Damn it. How is my mic? Has this been? You haven't griped at me once tonight.
Yeah, I'll fix it in post.
Oh, shut up. Am I doing it right or
Yeah,
not?
I think so.
Okay.
As long as it's pointed right at your
You
mouth.
gripe at me every single time we
Needs
do
to be
this.
angled right at your
Yeah,
mouth.
but my mouth moves. Oh, shut up.
For the record, I did not make a face.
Okay.
Is it okay to have a screwdriver this early in the day?
Well, it is your anniversary, so perhaps you need to.
It's after 1 o'clock.
You need to drink away your
Thank you, Time
last
Change.
39 years.
It's after 1.
It's after 1.
That's right.
It's Sunday. It's after 1.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I don't understand. Does it have to be? Not everybody gets off at 5 o'clock.
Oh, I know. No,
okay,
5's too
so
late.
that is too general now. It doesn't work for
Needs
the
to start
majority
during,
of people.
Needs
We
to start
need
during Jeopardy. That's
yeah,
when
it's drink time somewhere.
But anyway, in the
Unless you don't do that. And,
in the words of the J. Giles Band, how about love stinks? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, look how clever you are. Is that your segue?
Yeah, it is my segue. Well, you were trying to segue a minute ago.
I
so
was
thought
trying.
to help you out.
Thank you for recognizing that.
So we were going to talk. Well, we did talk actually last week.
Last
we
week
recorded
we
a whole
did an
podcast.
entire hour without a screwdriver, and it still didn't happen.
You know what? This one's better anyway. You guys are getting a better podcast. We were going to talk about the Great Stink.
Yeah, something you had read, and then I said, I know something about that too.
And I thought to myself, you know what would make a fun podcast? Cholera.
Because why not? COVID's almost over,
Oh,
right?
I love cholera. What a fun disease. It's not.
It rears its ugly head from time to time.
But it goes away, unlike certain pandemics I could name.
Actually, we won't talk about that. So
No, we won't.
But in history, there have been some that stood out, that ranked higher than
first,
others.
real quick, a quick history lesson for cholera.
Okay.
I'll try to keep it simple. The first recognized, it's an infectious disease, Vibrio cholera. The bacteria lives in water.
Sounds like an influencer.
The waters usually have to be warm, and they have to be estuarial waters near coastal areas. And you get it from drinking liquids or eating food contaminated with the bacteria, which can include, by the way, undercooked shellfish. Interesting. So
We're ripe for it here.
there's a whole bunch. Apparently, there's more than 100 strains of this thing, but only 2 cause
Grief for humans.
cholera issues. And what it does to your body is when you get it, it causes the lining of your intestines to begin releasing all of the water in your body.
So you dehydrate.
Yeah, it literally causes water to be pulled from
You
your
become
body.
desiccated.
Yes, which of course leads, unfortunately, to rapid diarrhea and loss, and the most important part, loss of salt, electrolytes.
Oh, yeah, so you're off balance.
Yeah, and a single episode of diarrhea can cause a 1,000,000-fold increase of the bacteria in the environment. One.
Wow.
So I thought that was actually wow.
Highly spreadable.
Yeah, especially in places that don't have good sewage systems, as we will get to
Yes.
very shortly. 80% of people who are exposed to it don't get it. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
80%. They may get mild symptoms, but it resolves on its own. But the 20% that do get it, it's a pretty serious thing because they generally die. And they go into septic shock, basically. Their bodies just completely freak out, which, makes sense.
So
first one is in India, and it's about 500 years before Christ, or before Common Era for you atheists out there. And I thought that was cute. So anyway, but it was a case where up a river complex, the Ganges Delta, people began getting a disease called morixi, and they would die within 8 hours of symptoms. And this was the first cholera pandemic that we know of.
That got written down.
In 1817, and it came from rice, weirdly enough. It was contaminated with water because
the water they washed the rice in
and what it
wasn't.
grew in as well.
Even when they cooked it, it still didn't.
No, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And
That's why you always wash your rice with clean water. And,
Well-
and a little cap full of vinegar when you cook
sure, to keep the cholera out.
it. I don't know. It just helps.
Couldn't hurt. Anyway, killed 100,000 people on Java, and as it moved out and into other places because of shipping,
Because the rice is going everywhere.
Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia,
Oh, damn.
Indonesia, China, Japan. The pandemic that started in 1817 was still spreading in 1822.
Oh, wow.
Same exact pandemic.
So probably why rice wasn't a big staple then
And then the
other-
Brits, wait, it gets better. Then the Brits brought it to a place that had never been before, the area of the Persian Gulf.
Oh, there you go. That's what I was getting at, but you always cut me off. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then it starts making its way, of course.
it makes its way like
Yes.
weather.
Yes, it makes its way like Grant's weather. And then 6 years after it started, it just went away.
I wonder if they just they had fought it for so long that it wasn't really a problem for them anymore, or if they developed some sort of technology that cleaned it better.
I think they probably
helped their
realized we
water.
need to clean this mess up.
Okay, but the India one wasn't the one you were going to talk about.
No.
That didn't start the whole.
No, but it did make its way to Europe. And by the 1850s, it was pretty much everywhere. And that's how it spread. I mean, it literally just traveled. And we get to London, a city on the move.
a growing city.
London's great stink, as it has come to be known, is there's a cliche that says, and I'm reading, by the way, a cliche that takes a lot to rouse British to action. But in the long, hot summer of 1858, the smell was in the air that time for talking was over. That's the sentence.
That's the sentence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not necessarily that great of a sentence, but
Apparently not.
maybe I was telling you so that you didn't think I was the one that made it up. Way to go, Miriam Bibby. Anyway,
Your writing sucks.
basically there is a river. Here, wait a minute.
You're Kamala.
I was going to say, there's an island, and it's near Europe, and that island is surrounded by water. And in that island, there's a river called the Thames. Now, if you look on a map, it'll look like Thames, but it's pronounced Thames. And it runs right through the city of London, the capital of England. And it's a big city.
And there are a lot of people,
Yes.
and they have excrement.
And people did things. We'll call them thing one and thing two. But thing two was the real problem.
All right.
Okay. So anyway.
Thank you. Get out of Kamala mode. I'm sorry, audience.
Yeah, I know. The Thames was the dumping ground for London. Had been forever. But it was getting worse because people were moving to London in huge numbers. Millions and millions of
Well,
people.
sure. It was a bustling city. Things were happening.
Now, they did try to fix it. The way London dealt with
Waste, night soil.
night soil
Yes.
was they had cesspits, and these would be dug, and the way they did them was kind of cool. As I started reading about places that had property. Now, in the city itself, they often had cesspits that leached into sewers, but the problem was the sewers were just ditches covered with a wooden cover, and the water still eventually made its way to the Thames anyway. along with every other thing in the city. I mean, tanneries, butchers, all of that ended up in the Thames.
Yeah.
And I should point out also that today, if you walk in London, the Thames is below you. That is not how it was then.
At the time, yeah.
It was a banked. I mean, the stream. You walked out of the Thames straight onto dry land. You know, there's no bank the way you would think of a bank. It was flat. Anyway, so all of that went basically to the Thames. But the way they did the cesspits, they dig a hill in the back of the property, and then dig a hole in the hill, line it with brick.
With brick?
Yes, they put a door at the bottom, and they put a cover on top with a toilet. And it just went into the cesspit. And then the gong scourers would come.
What a job.
And they would dig it out. And you would have to pay to have that dug out. But if you had enough property
dig
to
it out, you mean,
cesspit,
how could that be shovelable? Could you shovel that? Is that what they would do?
You know?
I mean, now we have the little suction things, but.
Well, I would imagine.
How did they.
I'm thinking that most of the solids would go to the bottom.
Sure, that's what it means. So
right.
would you just be able
so
to
they
shovel
would come
or
first.
hoe it
No,
out?
you know what I think, now that I'm thinking about it.
You open the door. Isn't that what the door was for?
Yeah, but I was thinking about the fact that the door was, the way the one I looked at, the construction of the door was about 5 feet off the ground.
Oh.
It was like almost like a Dutch door with no bottom.
Are you crapping over the door?
No. But
It was
what
to
I'm
get
thinking
stuff
is
out.
they would bail out the liquids. They probably just dumped them on the ground, right?
Ladle it?
And then, well, maybe the solids would get solid.
Yeah, I don't. Okay. Yeah.
Or maybe, you know what? I bet the liquid would leach out. I bet it just leach
it just
out.
threw the bricks into the ground.
Sure.
Yeah, probably so. And then you're left
I don't know.
with.
It was
all
weird.
Right,
It was a weird
I got a
thing.
better understanding. All right.
But it was like a tunnel that kind of went at a down angle. It was
Move on to
weird.
the rest of your shit.
I see that. So anyway, it was bad. Everybody put their waste in the.
Well, you got to do
Thames.
it.
And they started having some problems. And the first hint of serious problem was that 2 areas of the city got cholera.
Oh.
And there was a doctor, Dr. Snow.
Smell didn't come first. You would think smell would
Well,
come first.
the Thames already stunk.
Well,
But you know how it is.
You live with it.
You
don't
live with it.
notice
You don't
That's
notice it as
true.
much.
All right.
Anyway, so Snow was making the suggestion, crazy as it was, that something was wrong with the water at these 2 pumps. That's why these areas got cholera. And they, of course, correctly, being much older doctors than him, said, "You silly, silly man. That's not why they have cholera. They must have smelled miasma."
Miasma.
And miasma is just foul odors.
So,
But they thought people
well,
could
so
get.
then it is smelling something bad.
Yeah.
So due to that.
But they blamed a lot of especially cholera, on the miasma.
Yeah, well, those are the same kind of men that thought
Anyway,
you needed to
so
leave your.
eventually the cholera in those areas burned themselves. Oh, I'm sorry.
I said those were the same kind of men who thought you should leave your operating smock on for every surgery, and not clean between. Same thought
Yes.
process.
Or perform an autopsy and then go deliver a baby.
And then deliver a baby and not clean up in between.
Yeah, those guys.
Because
the smart doctors.
Because it's good luck to have that all over it.
Hey, it's science.
So, miasma.
It's proven science.
It's logical. Very logical.
So they burned themselves out, the 2 cholera epidemics, and it happened again. And this time, Snow took it upon himself to go have the handle removed from the public pump.
Oh, wait. Took the handle off so they couldn't pull up water?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Made them go elsewhere for their water. And
broke it.
I guess he was lucky that they didn't go somewhere, that had cholera already.
Again.
But anyway, it ended. He proved that it ended.
Oh, and because they didn't get the water.
So a few of those doctors that before hadn't listened to him began listening to him. Meanwhile, the population in London had grown so much that there were people living along the river literally getting their water from the
Thames?
river directly.
Oh.
And so cholera begins coming. But
Kinda
that's not the thing we're here to talk about.
No?
Cholera is just a side note of what became known as the Great Stink. The foulest nuisance that ever disgraced the annals of a nation.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, that's a good sentence.
It is a good sentence.
Much better.
State of the River in 1858, the London City Press. The River Thames is every whit as filthy as it has been represented. It is a receptacle of the excreta of near 3 million persons.
Ew.
Dwellings, factories, laundry, streets pour their liquid and solid refuse directly into its current. A navy of active steamboats employ their paddle wheels in stirring the slurry, and the sun, the great agent of fermentation, sets the mass into a work, so that from Teddington to the Nore, the Thames breeds pestilence for all who traverse its surface, pass over it, or live within reach of the air that has wafted over its stream of putrefaction.
Ew.
Just that alone tells you everything.
All right, but see, you got weather playing a factor too, because weather don't care.
That's right. And
cholera.
In 1858, the weather had gotten hotter than it had ever been before. And they'd had a couple few years of this. They knew that this was a serious problem.
But this was a tipping point.
Yes.
They have a tipping point now because it gets too hot.
So what impact did this have? This fermenting river have on London? Well, a duke in the House of Lords said, owing to the pestilential nature of the water, the number of passengers on board the river steamers had very much decreased of late.
Because people don't want to float the river. It smells bad.
One gentleman, when going down the river on one of those steamers, has so much been affected by the stench that he was seized with vomiting. And he had heard that other persons had been carried to the shore in a fainting state.
Oh, it's affecting the elite, the upper crust.
Oh, yes. And
well, we can't have that.
The stench has been so great during the last fortnight that many persons have refrained from going upon the river. Others have been seen crossing the bridges with handkerchiefs to their noses and their mouths to exclude the pestiferous exhalation which awaited them.
I'm going to start seeing plague masks on everybody.
Oh, yeah.
With some rosemary in the beak.
A Thames waterman who was said to have died from cholera, brought on by his exposure to the stench while working.
So the miasma. Mm-hmm.
The miasma. And they blame him constantly. All
right, so where...
One more. Oh. Reverend Blackwell and his family, his wife and himself and the 4 children all passed away from the effects of fever and dysentery, the result of, in the opinion of the Reverend and family physician, he's both.
He's both.
The result of the noxious effluvia from the Thames. That's the smell.
The entire family died from smell.
Well, except that 10,000 other people who lived along the same area where they lived were either dead, dying, or sick.
Wow.
So that's the great stink of London. And there are so many of these. I encourage you just more than ever to please.
To read about people who don't have good waste disposal.
Yeah, the British newspaper archive is awesome. You can learn so much about London and about Britain and some of the stuff. But anyway, real quick.
Real quick. Oh,
well, as quick as I can.
That'll be impressive.
Politicians did nothing for the longest time. People were dying. It didn't matter. It didn't affect them. And then they built the Palace of Westminster.
Oh.
And they built it literally
the land,
on the shore.
So what did that do?
The new Palace of Westminster is built on the shore of this pestilential stream. Thither, the lords and commons of the realm, I like that. Thither, the lord and commons of the realm resort daily, and laterally, these noble lords and honorable gentlemen have been so uncommanded by the annoyance that as an expedient, canvas-soaked bags and chloride of zinc have been hung before the open windows of this stately palace of administration.
Catch the smell.
And barge loads of quicklime have been emptied on the murky bank of filthy deposit.
Oh.
So they're hanging bags of weird smells in the...
to try to overcast.
And this is my favorite. I'm going to read it like it's a news story that you...
Oh. All right, do it.
That's the teletype.
This just in.
Panic in a committee room of the House of Commons from the state of the Thames. A sudden rush from the room took place, foremost amongst them being the Chancellor of the Exchequer, with a mass of paper in one hand and his pocket handkerchief clutched in the other and applied to his nose, followed closely by Sir James Graham, who seems to be attacked by a sudden fit of expectoration. Mr. Gladstone also seemed much affected, while Mr. Cayley sought a solace and a relief in a cup of hot coffee. The other members of the committee also quitted the apartment. They were glad to proceed with their business in another room, provided it had no windows. Yes.
Because we can't have anything seeping in.
That's when politicians began to act, because they knew it was best for their constituents.
That's right.
And they began the process.
What you're saying is nothing is different.
Correct.
Yes.
They referred to it as the bank, when the Thames would go out at low tide, they would call the bank hot mud, because the mud literally bubbled and it was just covered in a fine sheen of crap. People would throw things in the river to see how long it would take them to sink. And one guy threw a handkerchief on the river, and he comments about how it just laid on the river. It didn't do anything.
They probably laid odds on it, too. You know, there were groups down there.
And apparently all the bridges at the base where the line was, you know how you get that gunk from water that shows you where the level is? Well, apparently that gunk at this time on all the bridges was literally just pounds of shit.
Must have been lovely. Probably confused dogs greatly.
I find it amazing that it's still like, you know, maybe we should do something about this. Oh, I don't know.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It seems to be okay. Anyway, there was a problem, and they had to deal with it. And I got to get the guy's name because I have forgotten it for some silly reason. There he is.
Because we did this last weekend.
Yes. Joseph Balzaghetti.
Balzaghetti?
Basilgetti. Got it.
Oh, that's different than balzaghetti. Because that's like a strange
Balzaghetti
spaghetti.
is a strange meal.
It's a strange spaghetti.
Made with lamb fries. Anyway, Joseph Balzaghetti, he was a surveyor, but he also had an idea of how they could take care of this problem. And he came up with a system by which they basically banked in the Thames, first of all, raising the sides of the Thames much higher. So
like our levee in New Orleans.
Correct.
Yes.
And building up the area near the river.
Yeah.
So now all the paths that once flowed into the river, well, now we got to get them to flow somewhere else. And what they did is they built this big bank on both sides, and they put their sewer in that. And it takes it down.
It ran
river.
with it. They used the gravity of the river.
Correct. And it ran down, and they created pumping stations to constantly keep water flowing all the time. And way down the river, out towards the ocean, were collecting ponds where everything would do its business naturally.
Yeah, it had time, and it was away from people and population.
Yeah, and they only had one other cholera problem, and it was very small and very local, and most likely came from contaminated shellfish. They said, which would have been collected at the ocean, out
by where that stuff is going.
There you go. But anyway, so when you're in London, if we ever get to visit Europe again, anybody, that's the deal. And you can go visit these pumping stations for the sewers.
Yeah, and see. They were built beautifully.
And yeah, they're gorgeous. Mm-hmm. They look like fine china and glazed brick. They're phenomenally beautiful.
So nobody saw what the Romans did to figure that out before they had to have people die?
Well, the Romans had the advantage of aqueducts that kept water moving. But the river around Rome was in the same kind of condition as the Thames, but the Romans just sort of, I read about how they conducted tours on the river that ran around Rome. And they called it the Great Sewer. They were proud of it.
Look at what we've done.
And what they did is they created a canal basically around their city that was made for crap.
Well, and so when you told me.
But it got it out of the city.
Yeah, and away from the people, so it's healthier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maintenance, people, maintenance. Damn. So when you told me about the Great Stink, as you always do, tell me about the shit you read about, and then I tell you about my shit that I read about.
Yes.
So
we share shit.
We do. So I said I had heard a story. I'd read something about Abraham Lincoln and some issues during his time at the White House. And, his young son, Willie, died while he was in the White House.
Oh,
yes. Yeah, they had a tragic life anyway, but he had genetic issues as well. But they had a similar cholera situation at the White House, which resulted in the death of, that they believe, at least 3 presidents, and the illness of many White House staffers and people who all had to work at the White House
how is that
for
possible?
Many years. Well, they didn't take care of their night soil.
You got to take care of your shit, people.
You got to take care of your shit, yeah. So much like London, it was a canal and river issue as well. It's not, Washington, D.C. originally was not the shining beacon that it is today, the capital of our nation, where our most intelligent people reside and make
all
decisions.
The smart people are there. Yeah.
Everybody wants to be in D.C.
Yeah, there's no smarter.
But you probably don't want to send your children to school there.
Okay.
That's okay.
Way sidetracked.
I don't want to get sidetracked. No, so
that's my job.
Yeah, that's yours. I'm here to stop all that. I'm keep him on track. Anyway, so the White House itself, October 13th, 1792, construction began. And, it was a swamp back then. It was not, what it is today. If I can find an overgrown swamp with primitive roads and no infrastructure.
Perfect.
Let's build it right here.
Build a capital.
Despite the fact that Philadelphia wanted it there. They wanted the White House kind of thing there. It wasn't called the White House, and Teddy Roosevelt did that.
Yeah.
And then that just stuck.
President's house.
Because Teddy Roosevelt was the coolest man to ever sit in that office.
Everybody knows that back then they called it, that's the president's crib.
That's what they did. That's the Blair House. No, that was the Blair House. Anyway, so construction, basically on October 13th, 1792, the cornerstone was laid in place for the White House. However, it has not been seen since, despite the two fires and the rebuilding because it was almost condemned at one time. None of that ever revealed the cornerstone, because apparently on the day in October, a group of Freemasons met at Georgetown Tavern. They paraded as a big group to the proposed site of the president's home, and in a ceremony, they placed their inscribed cornerstone to mark the start of the house's construction. And then they went off to an inn and they toasted the event. They had toasted the event 16 times, and so no one ever documented where the stone was. Truman tried to find the stone during a renovation, but they never did. They never did recover where it is. So the start of the whole building was, it didn't have running water.
Perfect.
Yeah, because, why would you do that?
You don't need that.
No, you don't need that.
There's a perfectly good river.
There's a perfectly good river, and there's a canal that runs through the city as well. So like today, if you go to the National Mall,
nice.
The Potomac River is 2 miles. You got to walk 2 miles to get to the Potomac. However, like the Thames, it was right there. Like where the National Mall is, the river was right there.
Right there.
You could sit, Willie and his little brother, before he got sick and died, would sit on top of the White House, and they had soldiers, Civil War Union soldiers, lining the banks, living.
Uh-oh.
And
what are they doing with their night soil?
What are they doing with their night soil?
And
what
their
are they
day
doing?
soil.
And their carcasses of animals that they kill to eat and all that. And so everything gets thrown in the river. But that's what was happening.
We'll just call it all effluvia. I like that word.
So no infrastructure. The mansion itself was poorly ventilated, damp. Abigail Adams used to have to hang her washing.
I have a theory about the White House.
The East Room.
It was junk from the day they built it. When you go and do the history, the whole White House was junk. There are houses that were built at the same time that are still standing.
Much better.
That were in much better shape.
Well, I mean, the British did burn it down in 1814.
We know something now about the building of the White House, which was they used primarily slave labor to do it.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to bet that they were just like?
Well, why would you try?
I ain't building a White House for no president.
Okay. Well,
3 nails. I think he gets 1.
So the city of D.C. wasn't much better off than the White House itself. They didn't really have any, municipal waste disposal. You would leave your night soil out, and they would pick it up and collect it and take it to a sparsely populated area.
Backwards.
Yeah, and they would deliver it there. And today, that area, of course, houses a Presbyterian church and all kinds of residential areas.
Sure.
But at the time, nobody lived there. So they would put all the night soil. So I guess decades of night soil under their homes and
probably
buildings.
Very rich soil.
I'm sure it would be. You could grow some good shit there. Okay. So for the White House itself, in the early years, they carried water into the White House in buckets, and they had these reservoirs from the river. Mm-hmm.
Well, they had to have a source of water besides the river, huh?
Well,
they had wells, I'm sure. And
that's what they do. They'd carry that water in, and they'd put them in these big wells in the breezeways, and that's where the water for the house itself would be for bathing and cooking and flushing. So pipes in the White House was proposed during James Madison's time.
Crazy talk.
But before they could do that, it burned. The British. Apparently, we went into Canada and burned the Prime Minister's house or something, and the British got pissy and came and
What
burned
year
our
was that?
White House. 1814.
Yeah, that's the war of 1812.
Yeah. So 1829, we move forward to 1829. We're still hauling water. The purpose, they wanted water in the White House again, but not for bathroom stuff. This time they wanted it for fire protection.
Why didn't they just put him in when they rebuilt the White House?
Yeah, after the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've learned already that logic is not a.
We don't have the money
we
for
don't
that.
have that. No, money was a big issue. They wanted to spend it on other things.
They didn't learn that you could just spend money.
Yeah. Well, so
They thought money was real.
James Monroe had stop. You're interrupting me.
I'm sorry.
Okay. President James Monroe had a fire engine in the carriage house. That was how they handled that. So they didn't want to spend the money running the pipes. So he put a fire truck out there. And yeah, all right. So funding was a problem. Another issue was, okay, if we do this, where are we going to get the water from in the city, right? There was no groundwater beneath the house. So they set out to find a good source. And Jefferson had a surveyor propose pumping water from a spring. It was 6 blocks away north of the White House. And that seemed like a really good thing, but the elevation was about 9 feet. It would have, suggested delivering water to the White House from a spring using a series of pipes. Okay, that sounds good.
That sounds like a winner.
So it was never used.
Okay.
Yeah, it was never used. And instead, they purchased or got a site about 4 blocks northeast of the White House. It was closer. Ground was broken in 1833, and they began work. And this guy, Robert Leckie, was put in charge of the project. He had extensive experience, so he's a good guy. He used iron pipes to run water from the spring 4 blocks away. And, since the spring was at a higher elevation than the White House, gravity did most of the work. That makes it all nice and convenient. And President Jackson was the first one to get the advantage of running water in the White House. They didn't even think about the pipes, the water, the source. They didn't think about any of that. Like, everything's coming from the depository outside of the city. Everything's coming from the river and the canal, and that's what they're using for their water.
Ugh.
And iron pipes.
Yuck.
Okay. So the canal, was feeding into it, and it was its own danger. The canal ran along Constitution Avenue, and because it was open, like your Thames, drunk people fell into it and drowned all the time.
Sure.
Everything. It was an open sewer, carcasses, dumping raw waste, just everything.
Pure methane all the time.
Plus the people,
I wonder if that's how spontaneous human combustion was first found. Somebody like lit up a cigarette or something near a sewer.
Yes, and it just exploded. It just blew up. So
Albus Flammius, Roman
apparently
citizen.
for the DC story, it was the same thing. It got hot. Washington in the summer can get really hot. Well,
those years around the Civil War were very warm.
They were extremely warm, and you had all those extra men in the city. You had even more waste being pumped in, more dead animals, more of everything, and you intensify that. The summer just heated it up too much. So the canal was only a block south of the White House, and just the Potomac and the canal together were enough to kill everybody. But what they think is President William Henry Harrison, who we all believe died because he gave such a damn long speech on a cold, rainy day.
And rode an open carriage.
But ultimately, because he was in the White House now after the new water pipes were put in, that he actually died of
the weather
of
don't get you, the cholera
will. So science now believes that was the result, or his death was the result of bad water. We also have that Harrison was actually killed by running water, and who else? We have more than Harrison. If I can find it now. I was good at this last week.
Wasn't it Polk? Isn't that what you said?
Harrison, I don't want to talk about all his symptoms. You already told us the symptoms.
Yeah, we know the symptoms.
Okay, so
it was a shitty situation.
Yeah, as Harrison lay in his deathbed, thank you. He had the mud butt. As Harrison lay in his deathbed on the evening of April 3rd, 1841, he uttered his final words. Sir, I wish you to understand the principles of government. I wish them carried out. I ask nothing more. Stand by your principles. Here we are again.
Yeah, well,
Kamala said we were sticking to our principles.
Whatever those are.
Claire questioned our principles.
When did our principles change then? Because I'm just curious. Are we not ever going to invade another country again? Is that a promise?
Maybe when the young people take over, maybe these TikTokers have something. I don't know. I really don't.
I got a strong hunch that that's not going to do you much good when all your infrastructure's all blowed up.
I think we need people who know how to.
How are they still getting TikTok videos out?
Well,
how does that work?
If you set off the right kind of bomb, there'll be no more TikTok videos, and then you better know how to run a trout line.
How do they have any infrastructure left in the cities?
Oh, I don't know.
It's just crazy.
Okay, so he dies 8 years later. An eerily similar situation was playing out in Nashville. Thank you. That was better than Rick rolling.
Thank you.
Good job. James Polk lay in a bed, his body rocked by diarrhea, vomiting, and severe dehydration. Only 3 months prior, he had been finishing up his only term as president of the United States. And so there was some suggestion that his illness began at the White House, and he fought it for a while like the brave man that he was. But this bout of cholera was just too much.
But the tiny thing he couldn't see kicked his ass.
Well, yeah, it's a silent killer. That was the title of the article that I used.
It's horrible.
So there had been no improvement made to the White House water system. Polk was out of the White House, of course, before he died, but a year and a half after taking office, President Zachary Taylor found himself in a similar shitty situation.
Man.
So it is commonly accepted that President Taylor became ill after consuming too much iced milk and cherries on the 4th of July, 1850. So apparently he was celebrating the 4th of July, as he should, and he partook freely of water during his Independence Day binge eating session. Within an hour of eating the cherries and drinking large amounts of iced milk and water, he began to complain of cramping. Well, I would think anybody would cramp up after that.
You have cherries, that'll jack you up.
And then a bunch of milk and
milk.
And White House lead pipe water.
Died of lactic acid.
Potomac River water. And canal. And so
gross.
It's quite
poo water and
possible
cherries.
that happened. So 5 days later, after fits of violent diarrhea and vomiting, Taylor took his place in history by uttering his last words.
This sucks.
Well, I didn't expect this. I have endeavored to do my duty. I am prepared to die. My only regret is in leaving behind me the friends I love. He didn't say family. He said friends. That's interesting.
My family could go to hell.
Yeah, now it makes me want to go see what his family situation was like. Had the water in the White House claimed its third president in 6 years? Well, now we fast forward to 1860, and Buchanan ordered running river water to be pumped to the second floor of the White House for bathing because Buchanan liked to bath.
Because bathing.
He liked to bath.
Water is okay.
Luckily for Buchanan, though, the work was not completed until his successor and family had moved into the White House. So he was out before it got.
Wait, Buchanan and Lincoln's next, didn't he?
Yeah, and then Lincoln. Okay, so now we got Lincoln's time. Lincoln was sick quite often. That was the story I had because something I researched when I was teaching a lesson. Anyway, and I knew
lots of people commented on that too when they met him that he always had a sickly pallor,
a gaunt look. So
sickly pallor.
Initially, Lincoln's wife Mary Todd had blamed her son's death and that of her other son, Eddie, on the family's political ambitions. In a letter to a friend, she said, "Our Heavenly Father seems fit to visit us at such times for our worldliness." That's a Puritan thing, too. That goes back to, so materialism and worldliness, she thinks is what. But really now...
Was she a Quaker?
I don't know.
I want to look her up.
Yeah, that Mary Todd.
I'm kind of curious.
But we believe that the same disease that stole the life of the 3 former presidents and countless other D.C. residents in the years past probably claimed him as well.
Poor Willie.
Poor little guy. And 8-year-old Tad, he also died. They don't really say... I don't know. I'm not going to look for it. It's okay. Yeah. Anyway, so clean water...
So basically what you're saying is John Wilkes Booth cured Lincoln of his gastrointestinal difficulties
and his grief.
Oh yeah,
the poor man was just grief.
He just left Mary Todd alone.
Yeah,
poor baby.
And she already had her.
She was already a little.
Yeah,
twisted.
I thought that would be an interesting podcast the other day. Poets there are an inordinate number of poets who were crazy and killed themselves or were just crazy.
Fun people.
So, because I always had my ninth graders
or develop their own religions.
I had my ninth graders research that, so everybody got their own poet, and there are a lot of interesting stories out there. Maybe that could be like a theme.
We could do, I want to talk about William
Poets of Insanity
and his apocalyptic religion.
No, it was very interesting.
It's very strange.
So anyway,
and we could also talk. We could relate it to the movie Dead Man.
Oh, and then you could do that. Yeah,
and we could play clips from Dead Man.
That sounds like a thing.
It does.
All right, I'm sure we've taken plenty of time now.
We're at a minute 10.
A minute. You mean an hour 10? Oh, okay. You're gonna have to take some out then.
But if you move the clock forward, it's still an hour 10.
Or a minute 10, depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
So it's our anniversary.
Anyway.
You're cooking me some gumbo. I made us some banana nut bread because just like during the quarantine, when you have rotten bananas and sour cream that's about to go on, you need to make some banana nut bread.
Yeah, make something.
So we're being very domestic and enjoying the fact
Hopefully
that
there's some TikTok people out there teaching people how to cook.
I'm just,
nice.
you know what? There are. And you just let those people be. It is the future.
No.
Whatever it's going to be, it's going to be.
No.
So I'm enjoying the domestic life and just grateful that I'm in my home and not trying to flee a madman.
And exactly. And again, Putin's a dick. We can all agree. At the same time,
look,
explore the history of what Claire Daly was talking about.
Yeah, but the crimes of the past don't change what we're dealing with.
But we just saw the story the other day where they were bringing Ukrainian families across the southern border.
Yes, and they wouldn't
but they won't.
Because they knew they were in a precarious situation. They've been denying these Mexican families.
Well, they gave them refugee status, but they won't give refugee status for people who are fleeing authoritarian regimes in Latin America.
Well, and not even authoritarian regimes.
I mean, look, they were talking to Venezuela today, and I'm glad they got them to release 2 people. Well, you know what?
Give us the rest.
Give us our other 5 back, Venezuela. Maduro, if you're such a great guy, you could cut the rest of them loose. They didn't do anything, and you know it.
And yet America's having to try to negotiate with, countries like Venezuela and
for more
Iran.
oil? No.
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing.
Well, we don't need to.
Actually, they ignored us.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right. But we're not going to end on a negative note, so let's not go there. It's a happy anniversary to us.
Happy anniversary. And so there you go.
Yeah.
Go out and have a great week. And hopefully when I play this back in a few minutes, it won't have a horrible screech on it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was.
I don't either.
And anyway, we'll be back in 2 weeks now that we're actually on track.
On the actual track for your monthly time frame.
Well, for however I time these out. You know.
All right. Just remember your joy is portable. Bring it with you.
You just like that.
I do. It's a happy thought. And it's my rock from the Holland
It's your
garden.
catchphrase. It's your catchphrase.
It is.
Well, I got to get a catchphrase now.
Well, get you one.
Keep on trucking.
No, not that one. That one's not organic.
Oh, okay.
It needs to be organic. Bye, people.
Yeah, and take care of your shit.